In this video, we are going to review the law of sines and the law of cosines. The law of sines is stated here. In a nutshell, it states that the side length ratio to the sine of the angle is the same for all three pairs of sides and angles. We want to use the law of sines when an angle and side pair is given. Otherwise, we have to use other methods of solving. Our very first problem is right here. I always like to start out with a generic triangle. I go ahead and label that triangle and do what I call a variable inventory. I write out all three angles, all three sides, and write down what I have given to me. As I go through the problem, I will continue to fill this out. Once every blank is filled out here, I know I have solved the problem. The first thing I do to solve this problem is I'm going to go ahead and find angle B. And then to find angle B, I'm going to subtract the two given angles from 180 degrees. I subtract from 180 degrees because three angles in a triangle add up to 180. When I go ahead and simplify that expression, I get that angle B is 101 degrees. And I also make sure to log that in my variable inventory. Next, I am going to find side length C. Again, I just chose side length C. You can solve for either one. But to find side length C, I have to set up that proportion. I start with the information for angle A, or angle A, side A, because that's the pair that I'm given. And then I do sine of angle C, which is 62 degrees, over side length C. In order to solve this, I need to cross multiply. When I cross multiply with trig functions, I want to make sure to put the multiplier in front of the trig function. It just prevents a lot of issues when we go to our calculator. Next, I need to divide both sides by sine of 17. Notice how I'm writing this down before I go to my calculator, because it's very easy to make a calculator mistake. Making sure your calculators are in degrees, you can go ahead and evaluate this and get that sine is the length of C is 9.1, and I log that in my variable inventory. I now need to repeat this process for side length B. So I set up a proportion, I cross multiply, divide both sides by sine of 17, and get that sine is 10.1. Don't forget to log that in your variable inventory. All 6 blanks are filled, so I know I am done. Next up is the law of cosines. Law of cosines is a little more complex here. It is being shown on your screen. We have, remember, uppercase and lowercase letters being written here. The uppercase letter A refers to the angle A. Every other letter here is a lowercase letter, so these are referring to side lengths. We use law of cosines when we only have one angle given to us. This formula is a bit complex, so sometimes students like to see it with all the different letter combinations. So here that is on the screen. Effectively though, you just need to memorize the first one and know how to apply it, but we wanted to make sure on this video that you had all three for your reference. A couple of important pieces of information about the law of cosines. Number one, always solve for the largest angle first. This is really important and prevents lots of mistakes. And then once you've solved for the largest angle, you can actually switch to the law of sines. And when you switch to the law of sines, we recommend that you solve for the smallest angle, again, preventing mistakes. So let's go ahead and look at our first example here. That first example is right here. You're going to see next the generic triangle and that variable inventory shown to you. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and label my triangle and throw that information into the variable inventory. So now that I have my variable inventory, I'm going to go ahead and start to solve. The very first thing that I'm going to solve for is side length C, the one that I'm missing. So I plugged everything into the formula that I have and leaving that little c and that side length C over here on the side to solve for. On the right-hand side, I'm going to type that all into my calculator, and I get 15.355 and some real long decimal. I'm not going to write the whole thing down here, but you should store that value in your calculator. To undo squared, I'm going to square root both sides. And when I do that, I get C to be approximately 3.9. So I'm going to log that in my variable inventory and then switch over to the law of sines. If I use my important information on the previous slide, I'm going to want to solve for the smallest angle. Now, the smallest angle of the two that I have left is going to be angle A because it is across from the shorter of the two sides. So in order to solve for angle A, I need to set up a law of sines ratio. So I have the law of sines ratio here. And just like before, I need to cross multiply. And when I cross multiply, I get the following. Remember, put your coefficients in front of the word sine. Next, I need to divide both sides by 3.9, and I get 42 sine of 25 over 3.9. Now, this is the first time here we're going to have to solve for an angle using the law of sines. And in order to solve for an angle using any trig function, I have to use the inverse function. And when I do that, I'm going to type second sine on my calculator of the ratio stated there. When I do that, I get A to be 27 degrees, and I make sure to log that in my variable inventory. One last thing to solve for here, and that's my third angle. Just like before, I'm going to go ahead and subtract the two known angles from 180 degrees, and I get that B is 128 degrees. Last but not least, log that in my variable inventory, and I know that I am done. I hope you found this refresher to be helpful. On the back of the worksheet that you have been given, there are 4 problems for you to practice. Please practice these problems before coming to class tomorrow, and make sure you bring questions to class. Thank you.